The legacy media has been forced to cover the murder of Irina Zarutska in Charlotte on August the 22nd. The video surveillance, the closed-circuit surveillance video from the light rail train was released to the public the other day, and the reaction has been fierce. Of course, there is but one component that must be focused on, and that is the Democrats' soft on crime, criminal justice reform, race-based policies. Now, the media is terrified of the American public having to come to terms with that bitter reality. For example, Politico wrote an article about it. The headline actually says, Ukrainian refugee killed in North Carolina gets dragged into political messaging war. Politico turns this story into one about a political back and forth, a political debate. So with Politico, an Inside the Beltway publication, being forced to finally cover the murder, the article that the guy wrote leaves out that the killer is black, leaves out that it is a black on white crime, didn't include the video in the article, and had no images from the train at all. You know what the one picture they ran with was? A picture of Donald Trump. This is a Trump issue. Politico wants to take the stabbing death of Irina Zarutska and turn it into a Donald Trump problem. You just don't loathe the media enough. They're nuts. And they're so desperate to hide the truth from the American people. And yet there are some truth tellers like Jesse Waters over at Fox News Channel who points out the obvious. And the obvious is the media is completely and utterly silent when it comes to a crime like this committed by a black man against a white victim.
Usually when beautiful blonde women get hurt, it's all over the television. Natalie Holloway, the girls in Idaho. You can't stop from seeing it. Now, this you'd think is the poster child for asylum seeker. Yep. She's from Europe, so she can assimilate easily. Her country is literally being invaded by Putin. She qualifies for refugee status, and she was working, so she's not a public charge. And then you have DeCarlos, who's the poster child for permissive politicians.
Permissive politicians, and I would add race-based criminal justice reform. Go to the root cause of criminal justice reform. Talk to any lefty about why criminal justice reform is needed. Zohran Mamdani in New York is talking about letting prisoners out of jail. He doesn't want people of color incarcerated. It doesn't matter to these lunatics on the left what the person has done. The overriding concern is their skin color, their race. And if they're black and they're behind bars, well, we got to let them out. This guy was arrested 14 times. Now, Charlie Kirk was called out by Van Jones last night on CNN. This is pretty astounding. Our colleague, Salem's own Charlie Kirk, made a very important point on his show yesterday about the way the racial factor has to be entered into the equation here.
A white Ukrainian refugee was murdered just because she was white. Everybody knows that, obviously. If a random white person simply walked up to and stabbed a nice, law-abiding black person for no reason, it would be an apocalyptically huge national story used to impose national sweeping political changes on the whole country. Instead, Megan Basham, no one seems to care when a white woman gets stabbed to the death.
Now, Ben Shapiro said the same thing last night on Fox News. If a white man had brutally slaughtered a law-abiding, innocent, beautiful young black woman, it'd be George Floyd 2.0. Oh my goodness, the riots, the meltdown, you know that would happen. But Van Jones, over on CNN, saw fit to call Charlie out for Charlie's common sense observation. Here's what real bigotry and rage from CNN sounds, and looks like.
People like Charlie Kirk, Van, they've been looking for opportunities to make this some sort of like reciprocal George Floyd situation. And that's the part that I think he's almost giving away the game. And it's sad to see a lot of people going along with it.
You know, let me just say a couple of things. One is, what happened to that young woman was horrible. And it's everybody's nightmare. If you're in any public space, subway, whatever, that something bad is going to happen to you or somebody you care about. So it does strike a chord. We don't know why that man did what he did. And for Charlie Kirk to say, we know he did it because she's white, when there's no evidence of that, it's just pure race mongering, hate mongering, it's wrong. Then he says that if something like that had happened the other way, there would be sweeping changes imposed on society. Where is the George Floyd Policing Act? It didn't pass. Even when you had a white police officer murder a black man on live television, the whole world saw, there were no sweeping changes. In fact, not one law was passed at the federal level. So I think that's an important thing to point out. The other thing is, you mentioned the thing about cashless bail. I think this is a big challenge that we have. Would you have felt better if there had been cash bail and the mom had come and put down $1,000 to let him out? It's not about cashless bail or no cashless bail. It's about the fact that we don't know how to deal with people who are hurting in the way this man was hurting. Hurt people hurt people. What happened was horrible, but it becomes an opportunity for people to jump on bandwagons. And then for someone like Charlie Kirk, he should be ashamed of himself. No one mentioned the word race, white, black, or anything except him. What people mention is the horror of what happened to this young woman.
Oh my gosh. I mean, let's unpack all of that garbage. And that's garbage. I mean, factually, it's lie after lie after lie. And Van Jones knows it. Number one, the man was caught on tape saying, I just did that white girl. I just did that white girl. A convenient little fact that, or a fact that Van Jones conveniently forgot. He mentions the mother. What if the mother had posted cash bail? Or had posted bail for this guy? Do you know the mother has already been interviewed and she said that she didn't want her son out on the streets? She didn't. His own mother didn't want him out on the streets and she said the system failed by letting my son out on the streets. She didn't want him out on the streets because she knew what a danger he was to society. 14 times this guy was arrested. And the best these clowns have on the left is to scream racism. Oh, it's racist. Charlie Kirk's a racist. He ought to be ashamed of himself. Well, he's not ashamed, Van Jones. In fact, Charlie posted a response to that ridiculous commentary by this ridiculous man, Van Jones. Now, there's a whole bunch of them over there on CNN. I haven't even gotten to Brian Stelter yet. He's another piece of work. Here's what Charlie posted on X. Van Jones, I'm not ashamed, but you should be. You're part of a media cabal that tried to silence this story because it exposes the gross incompetence of Democrats' so-called criminal justice reform. You and other talking heads on TV are complicit in the revolving door that lets these violent criminals roam our streets to maim and murder. Secondly, there was no George Floyd Criminal Justice Reform Act because it would have been a disaster. And cooler heads eventually prevailed when we started challenging the D.C. media establishment. George Floyd, Charlie writes, died of a drug overdose after a lifetime of destroying his body with illegal substances. BLM burned down American cities and terrorized businesses for a criminal who didn't cooperate with police. His friends did. They're alive today. How many black and brown people died post-George Floyd because police were afraid to go into urban neighborhoods for fear of being scapegoated if something went wrong? And yes, of course, if the races were reversed, you'd be the loudest voice crying racism, Mr. White Lash. Remember Van Jones? What America saw with Donald Trump's election was a white lash. And Charlie correctly points out that the killer said, I got that white girl. Why did he say that, Van Jones? Oh, race doesn't have anything to do with it? Lastly, Charlie writes, would you even be talking about this story if we hadn't raised the issue on social media? Of course you wouldn't be. Of course not. Charlie says Americans are sick of the lies and racial grievances built on fake news narratives. The propaganda is literally killing innocent people. The point of this whole story is criminal justice reform, as advanced by the lunatics on the left and the Democrat Party. These are policies steeped in race. They will tell you black people, brown people, people of color shouldn't be behind bars. That's why the Zohran Mamdanis of the world want to empty out the prisons. And that's not just rhetoric on my part. He said it. Mamdani is on record as saying that the prisons are overcrowded and we got to release prisoners, particularly people of color, from behind bars. Great timing, Zohran. Let's hear more about your criminal justice reform ideas. And let's see if New Yorkers are stupid enough to elect you mayor. 800-655-MIKE. Welcome in, fired up today, and hope you are too. We ought to be fired up. Enough of the Van Jones garbage. Enough of the people who are pretending that criminal justice reform works. Enough of the failed Democrat policies that are getting people like this beautiful young woman slaughtered on a train in Charlotte, North Carolina. Not in New York, not in LA, in Charlotte, North Carolina. Democrat mayor, Democrat governor, Democrat policies. And we're either going to wake up or we're going to lose the country. 800-655-MIKE. I hope you join us.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.